Welcome to Daily Premier League Transfer News, the show where I take you through all the latest transfer tittle-tattle from across the big league, always starting, of course, with the news and views from my club, Tottenham Hotspur. On today's episode, Spurs potentially look to pivot away from Antoine Semenyo as they feel like the asking price is a bit too high. Quelle surprise, although new interest in a London rival's star player will surely be fruitless. Don Fabio Paratici is doing his thing again as we hold talks with a wonder kid dubbed the Swedish Messi, and elsewhere Liverpool join the bidding war for Southampton starlet Tyler Dibbling. All this and more on today's episode of Daily Premier League Transfer News. Guys, thank you so much for watching and for listening wherever you are. If you're on YouTube, please do give this video a like. Please do subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And if you haven't voted already for the Tottenham Hotspur YouTube Content Creators Awards as put on by the great guys at Spurs Kings TV, if you like my stuff, please do give me a vote in the nominations that I am nommed for. The details are in the description box below. It's just a link. Click on that link and go through all the awards and give me a vote if you like my stuff. Really appreciate your support. But let's get going. Tottenham apparently actively looking for a new striker. They want someone in this summer who will compete with Dominic Solanke instead of just being a backup. They're willing apparently to allocate a large amount of the budget for this position. For me, this spells curtains for Richarlison. It makes me feel, if this leak is true coming out of the club, that maybe Rishi's time at Tottenham Hotspur is up. The fact that he doesn't get on the pitch nearly regularly enough. It's certainly the case under Ange Postecoglou, who just suffered injury after injury. But if you look back, also in his first season under Antonio Conte, Richarlison had a good fair few injuries as well. And to be honest, I love Rishi. I think he's exactly the kind of arsehole, frankly, that you want to be on your team and not on the opposition. But even though he proved himself brilliantly in those knockout rounds of the Europa League to take us to the trophy and did a great job as the wide left forward in those games when we were playing a bit more direct, I think it is fair to say that he hasn't really fulfilled his potential as a Spurs player. So you can see why Tottenham would be looking for potentially a number 9 to replace him. However, as I mentioned in yesterday's videos, I just don't really think the market for number 9s is very good at the moment at all. So I'm not really sure who that is, unless they get someone who I think is a guaranteed option to really challenge Solanke for his place. Then I would be tempted to stick with Richarlison for now. But let me know how you feel in the comments, guys. If you have somebody who you think is the perfect number 9 for Spurs, for me, back earlier this summer, I thought going for Liam Delap would be absolutely perfect. But of course, once again, Chelsea just blow everybody else out of the market with their wage offer and the fact that they can offer players a different dressing room to those in the first team because they can't fit enough players in it. But Liam Delap had the kind of Premier League experience of having scored goals in the Premier League for a season, but also the youth and hunger and desire, and I think he would have made a great kind of rotation option for Dominic Solanke, but he chose Stamford Bridge. You can't say anything about that. So let me know in the comments who you would want as this player to compete with Dominic Solanke. The reality is, I think that Tottenham will end up trying to find someone from abroad for that. And let's face it, our experience of buying number 9s from abroad has not really worked that well. If you think about Vincent Janssen, Soldado, for instance, to name but 2. Llorente did well because he'd scored goals for Swansea in the Premier League. So we knew, even though he was kind of in his 30s at that point, that he'd be able to do a job. Maybe someone like that. I've got pelters before for thinking that, or suggesting that maybe getting Dominic Calvert-Lewin in on a free might not be the worst option. But of course, he does have a terrible injury record as well. But when he is on the pitch, he is an absolute handful, especially when it comes to running the channels and taking the ball down on his chest and holding it up. But do we need to replace Richarlison and his injury record with someone with a worse injury record? I'd say probably not, even if it is a free transfer. Okay, that news I mentioned in the opening, that Spurs apparently will not match Bournemouth's current asking price for Antoine Semenyo. Spurs do not think he's worth more than £55 million, and apparently they are now turning to look at Mohamed Kudus of West Ham, who they think they can lower West Ham's price as they need to sell. Apparently Spurs would be willing to spend £50 million on him. Now, listen, it's not like the early days of the 2000s where Tottenham could cherry pick the best players from West Ham, like we did in Freddie Canute, Jermaine Defoe and Michael Carrick. West Ham will not deal easily with Tottenham Hotspur. It's just a fact. They know how much stick they'd get from their fans if they sold one of their best players in Kudus to Tottenham Hotspur. So that is one I just cannot see happening. Also, I like Kudus. He's obviously an incredibly exciting talent on the ball, but do I think he's a Thomas Frank worker bee when we haven't got the ball realistically? I do not. And I think Frank will. If you look at the way that Mbeumo played for Frank under at Brentford under Thomas Frank, he not only scored really good goals, great finisher, worked the channels incredibly well, but when they didn't have the ball, he was a proper worker bee, working backwards. And that is what Thomas Frank will insist on from any player he buys. And that is why Kudus, I think, is not likely. Spurs have held talks, according to Graham Bailey, with over a deal for Copenhagen starlet Rooney Bardghji. He's been on our list for quite a long time. He's been dubbed the Swedish Messi. Now, for any of you who don't know a lot about Rooney Bardghji, he's 18 years old, Swedish forward, playing for FC Copenhagen. Born in Kuwait to Syrian parents, he moved to Sweden at a young age and joined Malmo's youth academy before transferring to Copenhagen at the age of 14. Made a senior debut for them back in 2021, becoming the club's youngest ever player at that point. Bardghji has since established himself as a promising talent, drawing attention from numerous top European clubs. But Tottenham are, I think, one of the clubs that if you're a young player at the moment, you look at what happened with Lucas Bergvall, you know you're going to get a chance. Same with Archie Gray. And that is why I think Tottenham are towards the top of the list. In the previous season, last season, 24-25, Bardghji made 47 appearances across all comps, 21 starts, 26 sub-appearances. He scored 6 goals and 2 assists. Notably, he netted 5 goals in the Danish Super League, 1 in the Champions League, and 1 in the Conference League. Maybe some of those stats are from the season before, actually. His performance have earned him a call-up to the Swedish under-21 national team, where he's made 4 appearances. He's really technically proficient, good versatility, able to play in a number of positions, and his contract runs only until December of this year, so available on a pretty good deal. Market value at the moment seems to be about €4 million. He can play anywhere across the forward line, and he's a flary Tottenham-type player. So that's why Spurs are interested in him. I think he is likely to be a kind of Jhon Lange-type interest. Lange obviously loving bringing in the Scandinavian players. And I've got a few other links that Spurs have coming up that are more kind of Paratici-esque moves, but this is one that I could see Jhon Lange really pushing in. Some stories yesterday, a story came out yesterday from Matt Law that Tottenham are not expected to join the race for Jack Grealish. I did talk a bit about Grealish yesterday and how, for me, I don't think Spurs should be looking at those kind of players who've had their big move and their big wages. So that, I think, is a bit of a relief to me. I do think it'll be interesting to see where Jack Grealish goes. I wonder if Antonio Conte could get the best out of him for Napoli. Or whether Grealish would actually want to go to work under the taskmaster in Napoli. But I think he would do brilliantly in Serie A. Okay, another link coming out yesterday. Spurs are amongst a list of suitors for 24-year-old Lazio talent Mario Gila. It's believed that they would consider offers for the Spanish defender in the region of €50 million. He's 24 years old, as I mentioned, Spanish centre-half. Spurs, of course, are on the lookout for a centre-half in case Romero goes, and possibly anyway, if we are thinking that maybe under Thomas Frank, Ben Davis will not work as a fourth-choice centre-back. Gila has emerged as one of Serie A's most promising defenders in the past year or so. He joined Lazio from Real Madrid back in 2022 for €6 million, and he's steadily developed into a cornerstone of their backline. In the past season, he made 25 starts, scored 1 goal, while maintaining disciplined presence with only 4 yellow cards and no red cards. His performances earned him a spot in the Athletic Serie A team of the season, which is pretty hard to do in Serie A because it's such a defensive league and so much priority is put on how teams defend. In Europe, he featured in 7 Europa League matches. He scored 1 goal, completed 75 passes out of 81 attempts, and recovered possession 26 times. So a proper ball winner. He's 1.85 m, and he combines physical presence with technical proficiency, something that wouldn't surprise you knowing he's a Spanish player who has excelled in Serie A. He's a progressive passer, and like I said, good at ball recovering, and has been a key part of Lazio's play. However, apparently, according to some reports, his aerial dual success rate is an area for improvement. Lazio have already rejected bids because they value him at €50 million. So he offers a blend of youth, experience, and potential. His contract runs out in 2027, so a couple of years left. So this is a kind of prime summer for Lazio to try and get some good money for him. And let's see what happens. This is the one where I think really that's more of a Don Fabio Paratici type signing. He's always looking for good deals in the Italian market, and let's face it, we have got good deals from there before. If you think particularly about the Destiny of Doggy signing, who is still young and exciting, but has also played some great stuff for Spurs, especially in that knockout stage of the Europa League and the final. Some other big rumours yesterday that Spurs have started talks for Rennes player Arnaud Kalimuendo. He's 23 years old. He's a striker, currently playing at Stade Rennais, born in 2002 in Suresnes in France. He began his career in PSG's youth academy before making a name for himself on loan at RC Lens. In 2022, he transferred to Rennes, where he's since become a key figure in their attacking lineup. In the past season, he made 24 appearances for them, scoring 11 goals. His performances were instrumental in Rennes finishing third in the league, securing a spot in the Champions League qualifiers. Notably, he scored a hat-trick in a 5-0 win over Saint-Etienne. He's known for his sharp positioning, quick reactions in the box, and ability to exploit defensive lapses. He has a modest assist record, so he's more of a classic number 9. His primary role being as a goal scorer, finishing crosses and through balls with precision. Good finisher. His work rate and off-the-ball movement make him a constant threat. Work rate, as I mentioned with Thomas Frank, is going to be a big thing. And if you look at all of the forward lines that under Thomas Frank, even Ivan Toney, they all worked hard off the ball. Kalimuendo's impressive performances have attracted attention from several European clubs. Spurs, as well as Newcastle and Bayer Leverkusen, have shown preliminary interest. They should be aware, clubs interested in him, of his contract situation, as his contract runs until 2026. So not a surprise, Daniel Levy and his recruitment team looking at players whose contract runs out in the next year or so. He's rated about 15 million euros at the moment, and given his age and potential, he could be a promising talent for clubs in the Premier League or the Bundesliga to buy. Let's keep an eye on that one. That was a big report coming out yesterday. Lots of people on social media asking a little bit more about him. So there were just a few bits of information. Liverpool have joined Tottenham, as well as now apparently Manchester United, Chelsea and Newcastle, as well as Leipzig and Porto, on the list to try and persuade Southampton's Tyler Dibling to join their club. Spurs got close to him in January, but didn't want to touch the transfer numbers that Southampton were asking for. I like Dibling. I have to say, he reminds me of a young Chris Waddle. He's got a good languid way about him, likes to beat a man on either side. But when he played Tottenham at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, he did not put in a shift whatsoever. He seemed a little bit lazy. So I wonder whether he would suit Thomas Frank as much as some other players. The interesting thing about Thomas Frank coming in and signings is that obviously the signings that Thomas Frank has made as part of the recruitment decision makers at Brentford have all been kind of underappreciated, undervalued Moneyball type players who he's then kind of really improved at the club and have kind of outshone their data. So it'll be interesting to see when Thomas Frank has his kind of veto at the end of the transfer process at Spurs, whether he will want to take on kind of young, exciting talent who haven't really hit the numbers like Tyler Dibling, or whether he would rather back players who he sees as kind of underrated and less in value, and whether he thinks that can work at Tottenham Hotspur as a transfer strategy the same way it does at Brentford when there's less expectation, or whether at Spurs he'll realise that with the expectation you're going to need to get players who kind of excite the fans a bit more and kind of are worth more money in the first place. With that in mind, I did think I thought I'd read out a list of the players who are available on a free transfer this summer. Let me know in the comments if any of these take your interest. Jonathan David, of course, Spurs were in talks for a long time, but he's decided to go elsewhere. Tyrick Mitchell, Olivier Bascagli, Dominic Calvert-Lewin, as I mentioned. Kyle Walker-Peters could be an interesting one. Homegrown talent and an academy-trained player for Spurs. It'll be interesting to see whether he's somebody who would interest Thomas Frank. Josh Brownhill, Mario Pasalic, Kenny Tete, Neymar, Nelson Semedo, Callum Wilson, Victor Lindelof from Manchester United, the aforementioned Rooney Bardghji, although his runs out in December, and Abdoulaye Doucouré. Any of those interest you, Tottenham fans? Just some other news that I did mention in my live last night. If you didn't watch that, Diego Simeone was quoted being asked about Christian Romero. He said, "Do I want QT Romero?" Obviously, he's a great player. Tottenham are interested in Nathan Collins from Brentford. Arsenal, Liverpool and Newcastle also all interested. And how would you feel potentially if Guillermo Vicario joined AC Milan? He is apparently on their list. Let me know whether that is something you would be willing to let happen. Some other reports today that have come in. Manor Solomon, who got married at the weekend, is stranded in Israel during the Iranian conflict. The club are apparently in touch with the winger, who returned to his home country for that marriage, but is now waiting for the sky to open following the missile attacks. I will say this without getting too involved. Manor Solomon is getting a lot of abuse on social media from Tottenham fans, and the club are getting a lot of abuse for posting about Manor Solomon's wedding. This is because Manor Solomon has posted support for his country during their war, or their, what they're doing over in Gaza, and the club are blocking anybody who basically is abusing Manor Solomon or is abusing them. I kind of choose to stay away from political stuff on this channel, but do let me know how you feel about this stuff in the comments. Yeah, it's a difficult one, isn't it? It really is a difficult one. All right, guys, what I wanted to do just before I go on to the more wide-ranging Premier League transfer news, there was an amazing article written that was released yesterday in The Times by Tom Allnut, who is a brilliant Spurs beat journalist, and he's also a regular on the Tottenham Way podcast. If you don't listen to the Tottenham Way podcast with Marcus Buckland and Tom Allnut and Tom Barkley, and if I've missed anyone out there, I apologise. Make sure you give it a listen and do follow Tom Allnut's stuff because he's amazing. He's done a great article on Daniel Levy. The title of it is Obsessive Taskmaster or Misunderstood Visionary. Who is the real Daniel Levy? And because it's behind a paywall, I thought I'm just going to read you the article actually. Because it's really balanced and really fascinating. And as I read it, I'm going to kind of stop at points to discuss kind of my thoughts on it. But let me know your thoughts on this in the comments, guys, because obviously, as I mentioned in a few comments yesterday, Daniel Levy obviously still getting some fearsome stick from Spurs fans, and you can see why. But also, as I've said before, I do think with Daniel Levy, if you gave him abuse for Spurs not having won a major trophy under him, then surely you now have to also, you don't have to change your mind on him, but you do surely have to say, well, he has actually now won a major trophy, and you do have to give him some credit for that. Even if you want to look at it as the most simple side of it, which is he must have had the instinct or the temptation to sack Ange Postecoglou so many times last season, and yet he didn't. And as a result, we won that trophy. So you must have to give him some credit for that. Anyway, the byline for it is the Tottenham Hotspur chairman is one of the game's most demanding, with little interest in small talk and plenty of time spent on the training ground. Even for Daniel Levy, it's been a busy month. 23 days, 2 managers, 1 trophy, another summer of change. Those fans calling for Levy to resign in January were dancing down the high road in May, after Spurs and Ange Postecoglou gave them the night of their lives in that Europa League final in Bilbao and the second trophy of Levy's 24-year tenure. Levy has rolled the dice again by sacking Ange Postecoglou, the 59-year-old paying the price for a record 22 defeats in the Premier League and turning to Brentford's Thomas Frank. As the longest-serving chairman in the division, Levy's legacy will be shaped by Frank's success or failure. So who is the real Daniel Levy? How does he make these decisions? And after hiring his 5th permanent Tottenham head coach in 6 years, will he finally be proved right? I'm just going to say this, break into it quickly. A lot of people have a go at Daniel Levy for the amount of managers that he's had at Tottenham, and here, Tom Allnut talks about it being the 5th and 6th years. 6 years. There aren't that many. I just want to, for play devil's advocate, there aren't that many clubs who don't sack managers pretty regularly. If you look at, how many managers Man United have had since Alex Ferguson, how many managers Chelsea have had down the years, you're only really looking at clubs like Liverpool and maybe Arsenal who kind of really do give their managers a lot more time. And Liverpool didn't do it that much before Jurgen Klopp. Don't forget they had Roy Hodgson for a bit. They had Kenny Dalglish for a bit. They were, since the kind of 70s and 80s when they were winning everything, to back until they got Jurgen Klopp, they would chop and change pretty regularly as well. So Levy just chops and he doesn't chop and change for any reason other than he wants success, in my eyes. It's as simple as that. He goes on. Levy's relationship with players and managers. He's appointed plenty of executives with the idea of stepping back on football issues, but he's still involved in every area at Spurs. On transfers, Levy is there for the early recruitment meetings when the sporting director Jhon and head of scouting Rob McKenzie discuss targets for a certain position, the screening process when targets are whittled down, and the follow-up meeting when 2 or 3 options are presented to the head coach who gives his order of preference. With the first choice identified, Levy works on the negotiations, like in January when a block in talks left Antonin Kinski's agent sitting in a petrol station in Prague on New Year's Eve, prompting Levy to fly out early on New Year's Day and strike a deal. Even at the last stage, Levy is across the final details, including a player's medical, when he has emailed the results and knows when it finishes so he can be there at the lodge, the club's hotel next to the training ground, to welcome his new signing with a handshake. Now, this is one thing where I know it will boil a lot of Tottenham fans' piss, because that shows really good research by Tom Allnut, by the way, but it shows how micromanaging Daniel Levy still is within the recruitment process. Yes, he has brought in these middle managers, the likes of Scott Munn, and of course Johan Langer, and back in the day Damien Comoli or Franco Baldini, in an attempt to kind of show the fans that he's not involved in every aspect, but he clearly still is. It's his baby, and that will upset a lot of Tottenham fans, and I can see why. But in terms of the negotiation side, look, he is the businessman. He does run the club, and you can see why he's involved in that. But does he need to be across the medical? Does he need to be across all of that? I would argue probably not. It goes on. In an interview with Varsity magazine published in 2020, Levy said being a chairman of a football club was like running lots of different businesses, and he has his finger in every Spurs pie, from the academy and the women's team. Well, the women's team have just sacked their manager as well and finished basically at the bottom of the league, so that's not going well, Daniel. To the commercial and catering departments, he holds monthly meetings with staff in charge where previous targets are checked and new ones issued. Levy's environment is always demanding. He's a taskmaster. It's not on his mind to make people feel good about things, one long-time colleague said. If you do a deal, he's more like, okay, that's great, but can we also do this? I mean, that is in keeping with what you imagine with Daniel Levy from everything you've heard, isn't it? You hear that when it comes to transfer dealings, he always tries to, he says yes on something and then he always tries to get the price down afterwards. Which is a bit micromanaging as well, isn't it? And why some clubs won't deal with him. And actually, this goes on to talk about that. For players and coaches, Levy keeps more of a distance and he is proud of his personal rule to stay out of the dressing room. Let's give him some credit for that, because Todd Bowley apparently goes into the dressing room pretty much after every game. And that is something that you would not want at your club as the chairman. So that is something you have to give Levy at least a little bit of credit for. Still, he is a visible presence around the training ground where he spends more of his working days now than at the stadium and holds one-to-one meetings with players in his office. He discussed Postecoglou with senior players before the Europa League final, while in the Amazon All or Nothing documentary back in 2020, Levy holds crisis talks with Tanguy and Ndombele, his underperforming £55 million signing from Lyon. Okay, so what's not working, Levy asked Ndombele. I will just mention once again something that frustrated me actually. Levy may well stay out of the changing room, and like I said, let's give him some credit for that. But I really don't like the way that he arrives at away games on the team coach with the first team. He's always one of the first to step off that, and I just think, give them some space, give the manager some space. You're probably just doing that to kind of save money. It means he obviously flies on the jet to away games as well. And I'm like, Daniel, just give them some space, mate. I really think that would benefit him. But I also, on the devil's advocate to that, and let me know what you think in the comments, I think he wants to be shown to be at every game because he doesn't want to run away from the abuse that he gets. He wants to show that he is facing everything front on, and maybe you can give him a bit of credit for that as well. But I would want to give the players and the manager a bit more space. It goes on. With managers, that contact has depended more on results and relationships. Communication with Postecoglou was minimal during the final weeks of the season. Even if Levy and Postecoglou saw each other most days at breakfast at the training ground and were in touch on WhatsApp. In contrast, Maurizio Pochettino received regular visits from Levy for brief chats after games while at the training ground. Pochettino once listened to Levy recommend that David Bentley, the former Spurs midfielder, talk to the club's youngsters about staying focused on football, a suggestion Pochettino declined. A lot of fans complain about their owners being too distant, one Spurs employee said. Daniel's certainly not that. He's an active chairman in all ways. I just wonder whether Levy is able to tread that line between distance and being too involved. Ideally, you'd have someone in the middle. I'm not sure where Levy really fits on that line. Probably a bit too close to being too involved. Levy insists that his tenacity stems from a genuine love for the club, instilled ever since his great uncle took him to watch his first game at White Hart Lane against QPR aged 7 or 8. Where he says he wore a huge rosette, ate hot dogs and swung one of those rattles. But talk to those who know Levy, and a word that comes up again and again is also perfectionist, someone for whom delegation has never come naturally. I mean, that is an understatement. His obsession with the building of Tottenham's new stadium gave Levy sleepless nights. He had cameras installed so he could watch the construction live at home and email staff with concerns. He's addicted to it. Another source who worked under Levy for several years said. The football or the business, he was asked. The job. He lives and breathes all of it. I mean, imagine being those people in charge of the stadium build, knowing that he has cameras there, so he can kind of watch everything and then make suggestions. To be fair to Tottenham, they did use those cameras as something that the fans could watch as well, and that was a really popular part of the stadium build, but you do wonder whether that came from Levy's insistence on being across everything. Yet Levy's all-action style inside Tottenham jars with his reluctance to engage outside of the club. This is an important bit about his communication with fans, which creates an absence of accountability. There's never any defending of the club or the club defending itself, it seems to me. which makes it even more difficult, Ange Postecoglou said in April. Levy's decision not to add his comment or name to the statement regarding Postecoglou's departure was noteworthy, not least because they are curated after an initial meeting, which Levy attends, and published after a final draft, which Levy approves. It is believed the idea was to take emotion out of the announcement, but to fans, Levy's silence looked like hiding. A club spokesperson said comment from Levy wasn't appropriate due to the collective nature of the decision made by the football management group. I have talked about this. I thought I can totally understand if you feel like Levy was hiding from that in the statement, but also you cannot have it both ways, because Levy has put his name on numerous things. For instance, the famous memed Coy's Daniel statement, and he gets the piss taken out of him for that. He's asked by the fans to not be too involved in the football side, and then when he takes his name off something to try and show that it's a mutual decision amongst the board, he is also given abuse for that. So really, he can't win whatever he does, and that comes back again to me what I was saying about you have to give him some credit for winning a trophy if you're going to abuse him for not having won the trophy. And you know he's flip-flopping between things because he just cannot win either way. By his own admission, Levy has never enjoyed the limelight. He can be reserved and awkward and doesn't engage a room. Yet those loyal to him insist his difficulty with small talk is often mistaken for rudeness. If he walks past you and doesn't say hello, he's not being rude. He just has his mind on other things. Levy has rarely given interviews. I remain dignified and won't comment, he told the Cambridge Union in 2023. And he's addressed the players as a group on only a few occasions, like when Spurs first qualified for the Champions League in 2010 and at the players' party at the Carlton Hotel after Spurs won the Europa League. Wearing a white Tottenham polo shirt, Levy took the microphone and yelled, "We're champions," before insisting the triumph would set them on the road back to the very top. I'm sure you've all seen that video, but if you haven't, do dig it out. He is definitely socially awkward, Daniel Levy. Like, even that, when he was at his happiest, it just came across a little bit awkward. So personally, I think if he kind of knows that and he knows how it comes across, then for him to keep himself out of the public eye, it's probably the right decision. To make getting to the road back to the very top happen, some believe Levy needs to surround himself with experienced football executives rather than the intelligent but like-minded business brains he has relied on for so long. Donna Maria Cullen, one of Levy's closest advisors and a key part of the stadium project, has stepped down from the board in a move believed to have been instigated by the Joe Lewis Family Trust, which was aimed at shaking up the hierarchy. Vinay Venkatesham, the former Arsenal director, started work as Spurs' new chief executive this month. A club spokesperson said Cullen was stepping back by her own decision. Langer, Levy's latest technical director and an ally of Thomas Frank's, is expected to stay, but is from the data school of scouting, rather than those who lean on connections and instincts to find players. Langer and Frank have known each other for 20 years and worked together in their native Denmark. Scott Munn is expected to leave 2 years after Levy made him chief football officer. Munn has been proactive in making changes to the medical department in particular, but lacks football acumen, according to insiders, who said Munn has barely been seen in recent months. Munn's changes to the medical staff, including replacing Tottenham's head of medicine, head of sports science and head of nutrition last year, failed to bring improvements with injuries last season. It strikes me, let me know what you think, but it strikes me that Scott Munn has probably already been relieved of his duties and is on gardening leave, but has probably signed an NDA so that cannot be announced probably until Tottenham find a replacement of some sort. That's my guess, but let me know what you think. It goes on. Amid the churn, Levy has also failed to spot or promote some of the best footballing minds. Michael Edwards, Liverpool's visionary sporting director and now chief executive, was an analyst at Spurs under Harry Redknapp, while Jhon McDermott, now the technical director for England, was Pochettino's trusted academy chief. Damian Comolli, one of Levy's first directors of football, has just been appointed general manager at Juventus, and Paul Barber, who first worked under Levy in 2005, has become one of the most respected chief executives at Brighton and Hove Albion. In an interview with The Times in 2023, Barber said Levy was challenging, demanding, at times unreasonable, but very much for the good of the club. That's how I would sum him up as well. And Paul Barber, he's worked with him and he's done a brilliant job at Brighton. He is someone to be listened to. And listen, you may not like Daniel Levy and the decisions he makes, and as I've said many times, a lot of the decisions he's made are just terrible for the optics of the club at times, like the furloughing, the Super League, sacking Martignol at half-time, etc., etc. But he does, in my opinion, make every decision because he wants to improve the club and he wants to win. One of Levy's favourite stories relates to a parents' evening he remembers at school when the head teacher told his parents he should leave because he wasn't going to make it. He says his reaction was to decide he would never be beaten, and he subsequently got A's in his exams, and went to Cambridge University where he graduated with a first. That Levy sees that tale as fundamental to his character is instructive. After university, Levy worked in investment banking and then ran several different companies before selling the idea of investing in football clubs to Lewis, a family friend with Enoch. When Levy took charge in 2001, Spurs were valued at £80 million, while the club's present valuation is closer to £3 billion. Turbocharged by a state-of-the-art training ground in Enfield, world-class stadium, and regular appearances in the Champions League. In January, Deloitte's Football Money League calculated that Spurs, with €650 million, about £523 million of revenue in 23-24, were the 9th richest club in the world. Levy's conviction that his job is to protect Tottenham's interest and ensure the club is financially self-sustainable lies behind his stringent approach to spending. One Premier League club has imposed a near-complete ban on transfer dealings with Spurs. Such has been the infuriation with Levy's negotiating tactics. While Sir Alex Ferguson, after paying £31 million to sign Dimitar Berbatov in 2008, said dealing with Levy was more painful than my hip operation. Levy has become convinced that Tottenham's most expensive signing... This is an important bit here. Levy has become convinced that Tottenham's most expensive signings, such as Ndombele, Lo Celso, Moussa Sissoko, and managers Mourinho and Conte, have not been their best. Tottenham's spend on wages as a proportion of their revenue is the lowest in the Premier League. Now, I've said this before. I think that Daniel Levy, and this proves it, will look at the times we've broken the transfer record, and you can add Richarlison to that, maybe not Dominic Solanke, but it's rarely worked out. And the transfers that have worked out for Spurs have been the ones where they take punts on the less expensive younger talents who then grow with the club. And that is why we're back in this transfer strategy now. And that is, I think, something to think about, all you people who think it is just simple as if we had £1 billion, we would win everything. Look at Chelsea. They've spent nearly £2 billion, and it's not that simple. So I think Levy does have an angle there. I know it's difficult, and there is definitely room for us to spend more money on box-fresh, oven-ready players, the likes of an Eza, the likes of a Semenyo, the likes of an Mbeumo. But when it comes to smashing those transfer records, it hasn't worked for Spurs. He goes on, yet at least one former Spurs manager felt the transfer window was Levy's favourite part of the job, a throwback perhaps to his days in retail and investment banking, when a deal was not so much something to be negotiated, but won. Sporting directors bemoan how a transfer with Levy has never closed, and while there have been plenty of hits, Luka Modric, Gareth Bale, Dele Alli among them, Luis Suarez, Sadio Mane and Bruno Fernandes are among the many that Levy swerved. Rivals have also got smart. When Luis Diaz left Porto in January 2022, Levy negotiated a lower selling price before Liverpool matched Tottenham's offer and hijacked the deal. He makes things difficult for people, a source said, and that reputation affects the whole club. So yeah, that's undoubtedly true. People have been hijacking our transfer deals for a while. You can go back as far as Willian for that. And the reality is that I do think the way that Levy operates probably does make Spurs harder to deal with. I wonder quite often, why do Arsenal and Chelsea deal with each other so much on transfers when they're huge rivals too? And I think one of the reasons why they're happy to is because it's always an easier negotiation, whereas dealing with Spurs just isn't. As an innovator, Levy has often been overlooked. Tottenham's 63,000-seat stadium has been a market leader for its corporate reach as a multi-purpose arena that hosts NFL games on its retractable pitch, go-karting backed by Formula One, and music concerts from the likes of Lady Gaga and Beyonce. Inside the game, Levy has spoken positively about the chance of cup matches being staged abroad, while during the pandemic he led the way among owners in the search for solutions around testing in stadiums. There's this idea of him as just a numbers guy with a focus on Tottenham, but it couldn't be further from the truth, says an American associate of Levy's, who has worked with Spurs in the past. He has a real global vision of the game. Even in the early 2000s, Levy was one of the first executives to put his faith in sporting directors. That is true. Frank Arneson was the first one. Many Tottenham fans would say that global corporate first vision has seen Levy, the highest paid director in the Premier League with a salary of £3.7 million, take his eye off winning consistently on the pitch. During the 2018-19 season, when Tottenham reached the Champions League final, there were doubts about the commissioning of the Amazon documentary, given Pochettino's future was already uncertain. He was in awe of Pochettino's successors, Mourinho and Conte, and enthralled to the European Super League, to which Tottenham were signed up members. Last year, in the hunt for higher matchday revenues, Spurs announced they would be scrapping the concession awarded to new senior season ticket holders from next season, a decision the club supporters trust described as disgraceful, and I would agree with that. That was disgraceful. Some at Tottenham wonder if Pochettino's departure in November 2019 scarred Levy. For a while, Levy seemed almost giddy with Pochettino as the pair rode horses together in Argentina and went wine tasting in the French Alps. When Pochettino sent Levy a photo of Bill Nicholson holding the front gates to White Hart Lane, Levy replied, "One day it's going to be you." Instead, their parting perhaps reminded Levy of his old instincts, which Frank will now have to navigate. It's very easy, trust me, if you're emotionally connected but not financially connected, to make some very rash decisions, Levy said 3 months before hiring Ange Postecoglou. As much as we all love our clubs, they are also businesses where you have to make sure the income is sufficient to match the cost. It's very easy to get into trouble. I realised quite early on that if we wanted to make Tottenham successful, it would be beneficial if someone running the club was not only a fan, but also an investor. So for me, that was a fascinating article. I know it's pretty long. I hope you stuck through it with me, but really fascinating about Daniel Levy. That last paragraph there, I think it's the reason why we're a successful business, but also maybe not a successful club on the pitch, because it's all well and good being sustainable, Daniel, and I love that about my club, I do. But the reality is we are being overtaken by clubs who don't care about that and are breaking the rules and finding clever accountancy ways around them. And that is a problem right now for Spurs. All right, guys, before I quickly go on to the other Premier League transfer news, please do give this video a like if you haven't already. Please do subscribe to the channel for daily Premier League transfer news, always starting, of course, with my Tottenham Hotspur news and views. Also, do become a member if you'd like to, just £1 a month. All the details are in the description box below. Okay, Atletico Madrid are considering Luca Dean as an option. Left back if the Andy Robertson from Liverpool deal doesn't happen. Adrian Truffer has joined Bournemouth as a new left back to replace Milos Kerkez, who is going to join Liverpool. Chelsea consider Jamie Bino Gittins as their priority target as winger. They're going to buy yet another winger. Newcastle are set to open talks with Brighton forward João Pedro this week. Eddie Howe is also interested in Anthony Elanga from Forest and Sporting's Ousmane Diomande. Kyle Walker looks like he may join Everton on a year's contract. West Ham are exploring the possibility of signing Colombian striker Jhon Duran from Al Nassr on a season-long loan. His move to Saudi hasn't lasted very long. And Real Madrid have internally discussed signing Arsenal's Miles Lewis-Skelly, according to Marca. Go and do it. And even other clubs in the race, including South Woolwich Arsenal, for Nico Williams, are now fully aware that the player is prioritising Barcelona. All right, guys, thank you so much for watching and listening. Do get in the chat, guys. Get in the comments and we'll have a good debate about that Daniel Levy article, amongst other things. Do give the video a like if you haven't already. Press subscribe if you're not a subscriber. And do vote for me in those Tottenham YouTube Content Awards. Just click on the link in the description box. Thanks for your support, guys. Come on, you Spurs.